G'day. When you've got really high prevalence, then when you get a positive rapid antigen test result, we can be very confident that it's a true
Health
positive.
officials are banking more on the technology.
We are very confident in its accuracy, and that really does relate to how much Omicron is out there. Part of the messaging about Omicron has been overly simplified. There is a nuance here. It is less severe than Delta, that's for sure, but it is not a mild virus. We've got record numbers of deaths in New South Wales. We've got deaths in Victoria that are reaching the kind of levels that we had when we had an entirely unvaccinated population. And so at a population level, it remains a dangerous virus. For the individual, for the one person who's received 2 doses of vaccine, it's not going to be as severe an illness. There's no question about that. But it's still killing people, and it's still putting people in hospital, including those who've had 2 doses.
Health officer says any sports stars who turn up with COVID will do the same isolation time as everyone else.
It'll be applied equally, and who knows what the world will look like in Feb or March, but that's my expectation.
Good afternoon, members. If I could have my slides up, please, I'll be very happy to speak to them. Yeah, thanks, Mishing. Certainly it's become part of our day-to-day lives, but it's also been part of, our genuine contact tracing system that's telling you about where someone who later tests positive has been. But like the pandemic, like our response to it, it has changed over time, but fundamentally it's still doing the job that it was created for, as a safe and a secure way of sharing that contact information to people who are at greater risk of getting COVID-19 and then getting that prompt.
It's really hard for me to say. I'm not involved as much. My feeling is people will come back to some degree, but there is a lot that we've learned about our ability to work from home and our desire to work from home, the flexibility and actually the productivity and well-being that we've been able to maintain working from home.
Of course, there have been huge challenges, mistakes, my mistakes, system mistakes in Victoria, in Australia and around the world. Not everything goes to plan.
Now really is the time to get your 3rd dose for a bunch of reasons.
The time to get your 3rd dose, and as you know, there's a 4th dose recommendation for over 65s and some other at-risk groups that ATAGI has recommended. My mum's one of those, so as an 81-year-old, she got her COVID vaccine and her flu vaccine yesterday in the one appointment. So good on your mum. Please think about that if you're in those categories and get that dual protection through winter. May not be the worst season, but it'll absolutely be worse than last year and indeed 2020. So we need to do it for ourselves, for our families, everyone around us, but also bearing in mind that the health system's under pressure with COVID. Well, certainly we haven't had a flu season the last 2 years, so there is the potential for this year to be a significant year. We don't know how it'll play out, but it's certainly picked up in the last couple of weeks with hundreds of flu cases confirmed. No, I realised my shirt sleeves were a bit too tight to roll up, so I was left with no other choice than to strip down, but there you have it.
Well, it certainly would have been an uncomfortable situation, I'm sure, with the camera put right in your face there, but you did a terrific job. As always, Professor Brett Sutton, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much.
Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton received his jab. There's been almost 900 cases so far this year in Victoria. That is 9 times the amount of cases over the entirety of last year.
Monkeypox is a pox virus in the orthopox family, related to smallpox, cowpox, some others not related to chickenpox. It is a significant illness. It's a disease that's normally found in Western Central Africa. Cases outside of those regions have been very rare internationally. But, our healthcare workers have been wearing masks for 2.5 years. Alan's been wearing a mask for 2.5 years. And people should really think about really what a low impost it is, a bit of fabric on your face to protect yourself, to protect those around you, and to protect the health system. It's a small price to pay.
2 months since we last saw him, a casually dressed Brett Sutton addressed a most serious concern.
Here I am. And look, I'm always active on Twitter. I'm very happy to speak to public health issues of any kind. And I'm here today to answer any questions that you have. Given you become such a trusted and well-known face throughout this entire pandemic, given that we are going through another critical wave, would you prefer to be able to speak to the public more often, or maybe not prefer, but do you think it would have some utilitarian value? Look, I think people are reasonably hungry for information. There'll be people who are sick of the COVID story and can turn off, but I think it's good for people to have an opportunity to access information. There are various channels that can happen. It's a nice reflection to think that I can be a trusted voice. And yeah, I'm always happy to accept an invitation that comes through to me to be able to speak.
Has the government told you at times not to speak?
No, they haven't.
How many COVID cases are out there? Now, Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton says it is important to register your positive result because that gives you access to COVID treatment plans, including antivirals. About 70% of people who can access antivirals are, and that's a number he'd like to see higher because it does avoid hospitalisations. In addition, 10% of the cases as part of the current wave are reinfections, something that hasn't been seen previously before.
Even if the illness isn't so great, when you're getting infected for the second or third time, it provides a cumulative risk of long COVID, and it increases your risk of other adverse effects.
Where are we on the flu season? How is that travelling?
It certainly looks like the flu season is largely done and dusted. We're still seeing cases, but it's very close to baseline. We had a very high spike through the June-July period, earlier than we would normally see a flu season, but it also means that it's probably swept through and we're almost back to a kind of baseline with flu. We had record numbers of people getting the flu vaccine, which has made a difference in that regard and reduced the pressures again on hospital admissions with influenza. But there are other respiratory viruses around. People will know, people who are symptomatic and who've tested negative on a COVID PCR or on a rat test will understand what I say, that there are still plenty of winter viruses out there. Respiratory syncytial virus, RSV is one, that's still going strong, even as
it's a challenge of institutions, of our leaders, but also of the human condition, because some of that parochialism, some of that vaccine nationalism arises across populations, and the media and leadership are responsive to that, and the Hunger Games is fed by that general conversation. So I think we need to really promulgate the fundamental truth that epidemic diseases, pandemics in particular, in crisis, are a global issue, and that it's okay to be self-serving, but you have to do it with a scientific foundation, which is you need to address vaccine inequity because it's going to be good for you.
It could play out in the world, and we will be chasing our tails to manage it. What we do know is that to the extent that we can manage carbon dioxide emissions, we can reduce the risk of those black swan events happening. And community confidence is probably not thought about enough. Of course, climate change is not the only driver there. There's this significant interaction of the human-animal interface and food animals and wet markets that make zoonotic illnesses an increasing risk over time. And with international travel and with the growing population and with degradation of the environment and the biosphere, we have those challenges that are interplaying with climate change. What we do need to realise is that as we address climate change, that is not the only existential threat that we're facing, but it is that very explicit opportunity to be able to deal with some of these other existential challenges at the same time.
I don't know. I think you have it or you don't have it, or you're prepared to maintain a kind of moral and ethical courage in the face of it all. I mean, one of the protections, if you like, is not to be defined by the vitriol that flies around you, at the same time as saying that there are going to be legitimate concerns in the mix of all of that pushback, and you have to open yourself to that as well. And you will learn through the process of sifting through. And yes, you can put aside some of that manifestly deeply ideologically driven vitriol and the trolls who just want a reaction or who want to be seen to be getting to you. But there's also legitimate critique that you need to explore and take on board as much as you can. But you should be defined mostly by your intent to unerringly focus on health and wellbeing, as is our job.
Enjoy. I hope the background, I was told I should have a decent background. I hope the background's been okay. It's my world map, which I was meant to flag the 90-odd countries I've travelled to over the last 30 years, but have failed to do so yet. It's been a busy couple of years. I did have an alternative background here, but I thought that's possibly not for a professional gathering such as yours. But please have a wonderful time, and thanks again so much for the opportunity. Wonderful to be here. It's an absolute honour to be given this opportunity, and thanks to Thorn Harbour Health for the invitation and the real privilege of being able to present today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Bunurong country and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So I want to speak on discomfort today. And not just because it's a 30-degree day and I've come from a rather sweaty car, but because I think it's a really critical interface that has been part of my development, and I think it's part of the way that we all go through journeys with difficult conversations with others. I'm an ordinary guy who's been thrown into extraordinary circumstances through the COVID pandemic of the last 3 years. And I can't speak to, my development over that time. I'm not the best one to judge it, but I do think I've sat in discomfort a great deal over the last 3 years, sometimes some extraordinarily uncomfortable situations. One of the big changes in recent weeks is certainly antiviral medication. And so these are oral therapies, so tablets that you can take that work against the virus. They stop it multiplying and they reduce the load of the virus in your body. And really it's giving your body a chance for the immune system to kick in to get you through that infection. Really important if you're eligible, and it's everyone over 70 and lots of people with pre-existing conditions who are 60 and over, or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders 50 and over.
Great, but I'm a happily married man. But hey, it's nice to feel the love. That's for sure.
Before I'm not going to take much of your time. Sir Brett and me were sharing the backstage and doing a little bit of Bhangra. And I'm not kidding. Do you guys want to see what we were doing? Please. Can we cue the Bhangra track again? 1 minute. 1 second ke liye, jaldi se. Everybody. Yeah.